Welcome to Pirate Living Podcast. We're your hosts, Karan and Kristen. On this podcast, we are highlighting ordinary people living extraordinary lives. These are pirates who take small, bold actions daily to create social change. Pirate life is all about rebelling and breaking the rules for good. Creating lasting social change starts by first breaking our inner rules. After all, the hardest rules to break are your own. The pirates we highlight have dedicated themselves to creating good trouble.
Today, we are talking with Dr. Guinevere Stasio. Guinevere is living an epic, uncensored life and is inviting others to do so as well. She is a mentor, speaker, author, and a liberation coach. Guinevere has been spending her life helping others achieve their goals and realized she needed to find her own freedom as well. So now she's living life fully and unapologetically and guiding others to do so also. So Guinevere, thank you for being here today. We're excited to be talking with you.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited. I love this. I love this whole idea of this podcast. It's amazing.
And so, as I said, you're living an uncensored life, but it wasn't always that way for you. So we'd love for you to take us on a journey and tell us what led you to where you are today.
That's such a good question. You're like, where do I go back to? Which reiteration do you go back to? Well, when I think about this question, and I'm like, where did it first start? I went to school to become a doctor of audiology, and I found myself working in a hospital and not really feeling like I was making the difference that I wanted to make. Kind of felt like a number. So I started to explore different scenarios, same job, but just like at different places, maybe a private practice or maybe in an ENT office. And after 3 tries, I landed myself what I would have called like the epic job. I had my own office. I had like a secretary. I had, all these conveniences that I dreamed of having when I graduated school. But what ended up happening to me is when I came back from maternity leave, from having my first baby, my boss called me the week before I was going back to work, and he was calling to let me know that he couldn't pay me what he was paying me before. So a big surprise, like never thought that was going to be the phone call that I got a week before going back to work. And he was dropping my salary by $15,000 a year. So it wasn't just like a small chunk. It was pretty much what we were going to be paying it to put our kid in daycare for me to go back to work. And, not only was that day just a huge eye-opening experience for me because I had gone through life. Like I went to school, I checked the box, I graduated, I did all the things that like society tells you to do to be successful. And then I found myself up against a wall where someone else was kind of in charge of my finances and someone else was in charge of my life. And what I had realized in the week after that, going back to work, is that my whole life, and especially my working career, I had spent my time helping other people achieve their dreams. But I had never actually stopped to ask myself, like, what I actually wanted to do. And so that was like that's like the pivotal turning point inside of me, and realizing that I hadn't actually been paying attention to who I was or who I desired to be. And that's what started this whole process of like, all right, who the hell am I?
So, yeah, once you started that process of asking yourself, who am I? What'd you find out?
Yeah. Well, number one, that I didn't know. I didn't know anything about myself. I was like, wow, I have skirted through life, just like checking a checklist and getting by. But what I found out was I actually started to explore my values. Like, what did I actually value in life? And, just having a baby, it was like, I really valued time. I valued love. I valued spending the precious time that we have, because what I realized was we hustle every day. And it's like, you get home from work, you put dinner together, you get everybody in bed, and then you go to bed and you wake up and do the same thing the next day. And then Friday and Saturday, or, Friday night, Saturday and Sunday are spent like, all right, how can we have as much fun as possible in these 2 days? Because we know that everything's going to start over on Monday. And I was like, that is crazy to me, that I'm just I have 2 days of quote unquote, like time to spend with the people that I love. How can I create more time in my life where I can do the things that I really want to do and not be constricted to like this time bandit that I have to stick within, so I really started to just discover, like, what do I love? What do I love to do? What do I value? How do I want to spend my time? Things like that.
It's really interesting because I mean, Kristen and I have both had big changes in our career and our life that kind of kicked off our pirate journey.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny that it was for me. I was out of town with my old job, and all of my coworkers, we went out for dinner, and then they wanted to go out late for. They were just out drinking late. It was like a Tuesday night.
Oh,
and they're out at the bar drinking, and I was in a kind of in a strange town. I took a taxi back to my hotel, and it was funny that you said you thought about your values, because that night I sat down and I wrote out my values, because I'm like, I am so misaligned with where I am right now. Like, what are my actual values and how can I get back to them? And that's what led me to start making some changes, was just realizing, first of all, what my values were. Because like you said, I hadn't really thought of it. I'd never really written it down and put pen to paper on that. And how can I make changes to get back in alignment when I was clearly just
so
not so far. I'm
far.
like, I do not want to go out drinking. And the next day they all show up at 8 a.m. for like whatever meetings, hungover and tired and feeling like shit. And I'm like, this is terrible. Like, I was so glad I didn't go with you.
I don't desire that. Okay, got it.
Yeah, totally. So what did you do next for your next steps?
Yeah. It's so funny. Like once you move away, once you realize what you don't want, and you start to like pivot your focus on things that maybe you do want, I feel like the universe opens up and like drops things to you, like, oh, maybe you should look at this, and this business opportunity kind of just fell in my lap through a friend of a friend. And when I looked at it, I initially saw women who were making their own money, women who were working their own schedule, and women who were like happy, and they were doing it with babies on their laps. And I was like, what is this sorcery? Like, nobody told me this existed. We can work our own hours, make our own money, make however much money we want to. And also while I have a child on my lap. Excuse me. No one taught me about this in school. Like, rewind, so this opportunity was network marketing at the time. And I truly believe that, you can say whatever you want to say about network marketing, but I believe that network marketing is at least like this gateway, this like portal for mostly women, but not only women, to see like there are other options. This was my first glimpse of like entrepreneurship. I had seen other people obviously start their own businesses, but it was like brick and mortar businesses, like, okay, I knew that existed, but this whole other world I had absolutely no idea existed. And that was like my leap into personal development. It was like, how can I do all these things? How can I figure myself out? So this deep dive into personal development and looking at entrepreneurship as an option for income and also like lifestyle.
Mm-hmm. What can I ask? What was the network marketing that you did?
Yeah.
This is so similar to my story.
Is it really? Yeah. We're like the same. It was Young Living essential oils.
Sorry, don't tear out.
Okay, so there you go.
That's so funny. We're like, I'm loving our paths right now.
We're like, oh yeah, it was. Honestly, initially I had a new baby. And so really what I was doing was I was trying to figure out how can I make this area so protective for my child? Like I really was starting to pay attention to what I put on her and what I used and candles and all these things. And so it was really like a health journey, but the business side of it was obviously planted there in my life for me to be like, knock, knock, like there's other options over here. Check me out.
Totally.
Yeah.
So similar.
know.
You're like two peas in a pod.
I love it.
So yeah, what you started down the journey, starting to learn new things, then more things opened up for you too, because you had some life events that happened, and now you're doing coaching with others. So yeah, what were the next steps in the journey? We'll keep going. What happened next?
So I made a deal with myself, and I said, when I can replace my income here in this network marketing business, I will leave my office job, because at that point, it was like a sign for me. I wasn't supposed to be there forever. Like, great journey. Thanks so much for the experience, but obviously I'm not supposed to be here anymore. And to be completely honest, it took me 3 years to do that. But those 3 years were some of the hardest, like, internal looks. Like, I had to overcome my feeling of shame for spending 8 years in school and all that money, some of which my parents had paid for. So now I'm like, I have to say, hey, I'm not going to do this job that I spent 8 years to get this degree on that I'm still paying student loans for, right? Like, I had to face that myself, and then also face telling my parents, because it was crazy, because I was 30 years old. So you're like, you're an adult, Gwen, you're an adult, get over it. But you still have this like string, this hold on. You feel like you owe people something, especially your parents. So there were lessons there for me. There were lessons there for me on self-love and self-care, because when I saw this opportunity, I kind of went gung-ho, and I was like, all right, let's do this. Like, you want to get out, then this is your ticket. So you need to work any free moment that you have. So on my lunch break, I was working. After the baby went to bed, I was working. I was going to bed at like 2:00 in the morning and getting up at 5:00 in the morning. I never went to bed next to my husband. Like, he was already sleeping before I was in bed. So on this path of finding my freedom, interestingly enough, I had to become like a prisoner in my own world, to then again see like, okay, this is not what I want. Now, how do I pivot again and shift? So I feel like in a short amount of time, there were just so many lessons. It's like, let's go down this road. Oh no, that road's blocked. Okay, we got to go back and go down the next road. Like, it was just this figuring out. And I think that that's important, because so many people talk about like a spiritual awakening and like figuring yourself out, and thinking that it's this like monumental split second that you're just like, oh, but it really is trial and tribulation and lessons, and being self-aware enough to see that like, oh, okay, we need to make some shifts. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Totally. And I think that's a really good thing to talk about, because I think a lot of people see these things as failures, like, oh, I failed at it, and then they stop. But like the word that you use, pivot, like that's exactly what it is. And we talk a lot about like in your pirate journey, you're using your own compass versus someone else's map, right? And so you're still sailing in the right direction, even though if you had to make some like navigational changes along the way, you're still heading towards that freedom, that entrepreneurship. It's just, you got stuck in some, I don't know, squalls somewhere along the way, and you had to turn around. And like I said, so many people just see that as failure and think that's the time that they give up. And I mean, both Chris and I have done the same thing, where you're like, even just like financially, you're like, cool, well, I've made this change, but now I'm broke. How do I pay rent? And sometimes you just have to do these things in order to like pay the bills, right? And that's different from like your life path. And again, it doesn't mean you failed because you've had to take this other job or this other work. It's just these things, these like obstacles that come up along your path that, like you said, you get to pivot around. And I love the way that you talk about that.
Don't you think it's like the greatest freedom that you can have is freeing yourself from other people's opinions? Because like you said, like I could have let myself stop or quote unquote fail and like been like, you know what, forget it. Like, I'm just going to go back to working in an office and just kind of get by, like not be super excited about it, but be like, well, I'm making a paycheck and it's consistent and I'm quote unquote safe. But I just wrote this down in my notes yesterday. I wrote down, the world wants to keep you exactly where you are. Like there's no desire for the world to show you anything different. Like in order for you to actually change your path, you have to like intentionally go and try and then fail and then try and then fail, because it's the only way that you're going to make changes in your life. And at the same time, not listen to what other people say to you, because other people are going to come at you with their own opinions of like, oh, I've tried that before and it doesn't work. Or, I mean, anything. Like we're all so opinionated. We just want to tell people like our opinions, which they're important. Like life experience is important. Hearing from other people, success leaves clues, like listening to podcasts on what other people have done. Like you might hear something you've never heard before, and that might be what someone did, but it gives you like this little jump for you to take another direction in your life. So I think opinions are important, but just freeing yourself from feeling the need to hold on to what everyone else tells you can or can't happen.
Well, and also, who are those opinions coming from?
Right.
Other successful people, or the people that saw that first failure, and then gave up and then went back to what they were doing before. Right.
Exactly.
So I also take whose opinion I'm listening to as an important piece. Right. I'm listening to people that are successful and have made those changes, and taking their advice.
There's a side to get those opinions too, which I've caught in myself, where I'm almost trying to control somebody else's experience based off of my own. Like, oh, hey, I did this thing and this is what happened. And when I catch myself trying to tell somebody else my experience, I'm like, oh, I was actually trying to control your reaction to how you'd experience it, instead of allowing you to experience it yourself and come up with your own opinion. And a lot of times it's that people pleasing, and then thinking like, if I give you my opinion or how this went for me, then you can avoid what happened to me. And it's like, that's a control thing. That for me, it was definitely a control thing.
Yeah, for sure. And I feel like people mean good. They really do. Like we mean well with our influence and our opinion. Like there's definitely no ill will normally for most people around that, but it is true. Like when you can zoom out and be like, wait, why am I giving you this opinion? What is it really important for you to know? And then also as the receiver of the opinion, being able to reflect and be like, okay, that's great. Thank you so much for your information, but not needed. Or needed. And thank you, Yeah.
Yeah. I like, you had been talking about the people pleasing, and especially that the tricky part with the parents, like even at the age of 30, you're like, gotta please my parents, which I completely resonate with, because around 30 is when my husband and I moved out to Oregon. And even with that, like, I'm like, I just need to be out here so that I don't feel like I have to explain every one of my life decisions to my parents. And even the moving, I felt like I had to explain to them. And it took a few years of me mentally dealing with like, oh, I'm an adult and I can make my decisions and I don't have to think about my parents. And it's a really, I think that one's even harder than stopping caring about other people's opinions, because these are the people that raised you. But so in that process of moving past the opinions of others and getting yourself into that uncensored life, like there's more steps here too. So what are some of the steps that you took to fully free yourself, so that you can now be uncensored?
Yeah, gosh, so many things. I kind of see this journey, like when I close my eyes, I see, peaks and valleys. I think I can relate this to kind of like the stock market. So every single day in the stock market, things go up and down. Like if you were zoomed totally in on the day, you're like, oh, today went up and yesterday went down and then tomorrow's going to go up. Like there's all these peaks and valleys. But when you zoom out even like a year or 5 years, what you end up seeing is just this trajectory that goes upwards. So even though in the days there's these up and downs, it's actually moving upwards. And I kind of feel like your, whatever you want to call it, whether you call it your spiritual journey, your self-awareness journey, like your journey of coming home to your true self, every day is like that. Like there are ups and there are downs. And so I really truly believe that self-awareness in this journey is what allowed me to make that trajectory of like going up and still like continual growth, continual expansion every day. And just knowing that there is no destination. There truly is no destination. Right. But I had to learn how to trust myself. I had to learn how to love myself. And so along this journey, which has been years, it was just exploration. And that's like, what do I love to do? All right, let me go out and do the things that I love to do. How do I like to have fun? Oh, I'm not having any fun. Like I'm not even making sure fun is a priority in my life. What? That you have children. How can you not be fun, you know? And so I think it's just daily exploration of what truly brings you joy. I had to stop. I think on a spiritual journey, like when you are doing this personal development, you can become obsessed with getting to some point, like getting to a destination. And as a generator in human design, I'm meant to do the work in life. I'm a workhorse. Like I see a task, I complete it, I move on to the next thing. I'm very good at doing that, but life is not that. And I think we lose the joy and the fun in the everyday if we're constantly thinking we need to get to some destination. So part of this biggest journey for me has been the awareness that there's no destination. It truly is, can you have gratitude for what you have right now? And also, what are your desires? Can you also have desires about where you want to go, but hold this like beautiful balance between those two things without getting caught up in thinking that there's some sort of destination to reach. So that's taken years, I think, to like pull apart and then kind of build back together, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. When you talk about personal development, what are some of the things that you did, like, for your personal development?
Yeah. So I tried meditating for a while and I was like, this is crap. Like I can't, meditation is not working for me. And then my sister became a hypnotherapist and she taught me a lot about, hypnotherapy is meditation with a goal. So she taught me a lot about what meditation truly is. And again, I think I had to pull back my feeling like there was a destination to meditation. Mm-hmm. And just sit with myself. Like, when was the last time, that you just sat with yourself and your thoughts? So I had tried meditation, obviously had a different thought about how it was supposed to be. But once I finally understood what it truly was, meditation has just been a huge game changer because it really does truly allow you to come home to your body. Mm-hmm. I also had to learn how to physically show love, both to myself and to my partner, my husband. Self-love is huge for me. And I think it's finding coaches, finding mentors who embody what you desire to feel. Mm-hmm. And joining their programs and joining their mentorship and learning from them, but then also making sure to take the time to integrate. So, again, I think we can get caught up in taking the class and being like, oh, okay, I did the class. I got an A, I attended every single day, am I spiritually awake now, but, so just these explorations of things, being self-aware to know what I'm not good at, and then going out and making it my job to become quote unquote good at those things, which really truly is just experiencing them and enjoying them and bringing them into my life. That was kind of a roundabout answer to your question. There are like so many little tiny pieces inside there. You could say like, I make sure to go outside every day and put the sun on my face if there's sun. You know, you're out just getting outside, taking a walk in nature. I think it just depends on what you truly enjoy, and then knowing that those things can change. Like, I don't desire to go out and walk in 2 feet of snow right now, but in the summer I definitely do, you know? So it's like, we can change what brings us joy, and knowing that change is okay frees us to be more of ourselves.
I liked what you had to say about it not being, all these things not being a destination. Like, there's a journey, and once we're able to release the endpoint and the destination, you can see the beauty in what is. And I think that's like part of it's learning to let go of that control. And part of it's learning to flow with life. But yeah, that's something for me too, learning along the way of what can I release? What can I let go of? Because when you try to put a destination, even to something fun, like I'm going to do this fun thing and this is the end point. If you have an end point in mind, you're probably not going to reach it. So,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that's, you know, like, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was only going to say, like, we only know what we know, you know, until we seek something different, or until we see someone else doing something different. School only teaches us to show up, get good grades, you know, pass the test and move on. That's all we know. So I also think it's important not to feel shame. Like, if you're listening and you're like, oh crap, that's me, that's been me my whole life. I mean, there's no shame in that. That's actually a great realization, is now, you know, there's more available. Now, you know that you can change the direction that you're going. So yeah.
And so what are you doing now?
Yay. So now, network marketing is not, you know, network marketing started me off. I had some really great years in network marketing. I was able to leave my office job within 3 years. So I matched my income. That felt really great. And, you know, again, that was a journey for me that I had to go on, and then also had to fail at. Like, network marketing didn't stay for me. It wasn't something that I continued to find exciting and enjoyable. But what I got from that journey is that whole time I was in that business, I realized that I was in a leadership position. I was mentoring women. And what I really enjoyed about that whole process was doing that, was helping women see like what their possibilities were, helping them peel back the layers and find themselves. So even though my time with that network marketing journey ended, I pivoted into mentorship and leadership for female entrepreneurs, just to help them become the uncensored version of themselves, to let go of the opinions of others and really step into who they truly are and see their unique medicine. Like, everyone has this unique medicine that they wouldn't have been given if they weren't meant to have it. And so just helping women see that's the focus of what I do now in mentorship with women. It's a beautiful process.
So yeah, will you tell us a little bit about how that mentorship looks, or some of the things you do with it?
Yeah. You know, I get people from all different walks of where they are in their journey. Like, some people who know they want to start entrepreneurship, but maybe are afraid to take that first step, or people who've been in entrepreneurship and who have quote unquote tried for a while, but feel like they're not making any progress. But really, it's women will come to me when they see that, you know, I feel stuck, or I feel like there's something else out there for me, and I really want to know myself better. And we start this journey of figuring yourself out. And everyone's so unique and so individual. So we just look at, where are you right now? And what are some of your desires? Like, why? I ask people, why did you reach out to me? Why? And it usually is like, I felt your energy, or I just want to be able to show up in the way that you show up. And what that truly means is like peeling back the layers that we've put up to keep ourselves safe, or what we thought was safe, and then actually getting to the heart of who you truly are, and then letting that shine. So most of my clients are entrepreneurs, but some have not been. But I truly see women shine when they realize that they are the magic and that no one else holds anything for them. And when they fully step into that, that's when their business explodes, right? That's when their income starts to flow in. That's when the clients start to flow in, because they're free. They're free to be themselves, and there's nothing holding them back. And they know that what they have to share with the world is magic. And that, again, they were given it for a reason, right? They wouldn't have this mission if they weren't meant to share it, or this message if they weren't meant to share it. So there's a lot of feminine energy in my coaching, because I realized in my journey that I could do all the tools and strategies. I could read the books, I could check the boxes, I could go to the classes and apply all those things. But if I didn't truly come home to myself and understand me, then I wouldn't be able to make connections. I wouldn't be able to truly shine. So this mentorship looks like this beautiful like weave of masculine and feminine energy. We take your feminine energy and we also apply the tools and the strategies together in money, in entrepreneurship, in motherhood, in friendships, in all the areas of life.
I think that it's so important to weave together, because we live in a world that we don't realize is so masculine, with the do, go, go, go. And for a lot of women, especially if they aren't, well, even being entrepreneurs, but especially if you're like working in the workforce, even in school, you've learned to fit in those boxes and to do that masculine energy of going and doing, that the feminine part of learning to stop and be and listen is something that's a challenge for many, many people in general. And especially like, I think women don't realize, they're like, I'm a woman, I'm feminine. And then it's like, but we've been living in the masculine. So being able to learn how to weave those two is so important.
Yeah, for sure.
So what is the social rebellion that you're doing with your coaching or just in life?
I feel like so this Uncensored Woman brand that I've built, it's so funny that I chose that word, because I went to go make I have this community called the Uncensored community, and it's on Facebook. But when I went to go make the page, Facebook is like, oh, make sure you're in community standards and guidelines, because like, you don't know what the word uncensored means, right? Like it's so, it doesn't fit in a box. And I think that's the whole point. It's like, we get to be, I think women specifically have been told to be quiet and sit down and not lead with your voice. And we have been made to believe that we're not strong enough to stand on our own. And I think this Uncensored woman is the one that's putting a stake in the ground and being like, no, I'm amazing. And I have a lot of tools and skills, and my magic needs to be brought to the world. And we're kind of standing in our place and being like, watch me shine. Like, watch what happens when my light, touches other women, and we make this ripple effect in the world. So that's kind of like going against the grain. It's rewriting this story that women have been told for years. I mean, you can go back to like the Salem witch trials and, really start to unpack some of the stuff that's in there. What we learned in school about the Salem witch trials is like so not the story of what actually happened. And so just looking at some of those history things for women, really interesting when you have a different perspective on life to go back and explore those things.
Well, now I want to take time and unpack it.
I know. It's so juicy. It's so good. You're like, oh my gosh, I see what happened. So,
are you willing to right now to share some of the things that you've learned? I mean, I'm guessing Kron would love to hear some of this too.
I probably don't have like very specific details that I can pull off the top of my head, but I think what was happening is women were shining. Women were standing in their own power. We were using our energy to heal, and the patriarchy didn't want us standing in our power, because that gave us power, and they didn't want us to have it. So, you know, we hear a little bit of a different story about witches and witchcraft. And, you know, I think the gist of the whole thing is like, they were trying to take our power away so that we were powerless, so that we had to depend on them for our needs. And that is kind of crazy to unpack that, you know?
Well, and so often, like, not just like in the Salem witch trials, but any of the witch trials, like throughout Europe and stuff. So often it was the women that were just living outside of society. So like the women that were living on their own, you know, sustaining their own life and not depending on anyone else, that they were the ones that the outcasts, that they were the ones that tend to be, you know, cast as witches. And so yeah, that was a huge part of all the witch trials, is like, yeah, the women that weren't being the good, subservient, controllable women just got accused of being as witches, which I'm guessing in today's world, like, we would be accused of that as well, right?
Like, can you imagine, like, so back then, if you stood up for yourself and you're like, no, I am a witch, like, you would be burned at the stake. You know, like, we've come so far. I mean, we're not going to be burned at the stake, but really truthfully though, like, if you dig in deep, that there are instances of people being shunned from society who believe something different than what we're told we're supposed to believe. So it's like, if you unpack that, man, there's so much stuff in there. It just makes you want to stand in your own power even more, because you're like, dang it. Like, I was given this body and this wisdom for a reason, you know? Yeah.
Well, even in like today, modern culture, like, to be labeled as a feminist is like, so many people see that as like a bad label, like, oh, you're a feminist. I'm like, of course I am. Of course I'm rooting for my own people.
I'm a woman. Yes.
Like, I'm a woman. Why would I not be a feminist? Why would I like be against me having like equality and all of these important things that aren't necessarily always available for women in our society? And so I think even just in the modern day, like, terms of being a feminist and standing up for women and women's rights and reproductive rights and all of these things, like, it still gets labeled as you know, bad by the patriarchy, not by most of us. And like, even when you then go looking at the other women who are like, oh, I'm not a feminist, and like that internalized patriarchy, and like, oh, anyways, we can go on about that forever. We can just keep
so many holes.
So many. So we talked a little bit before we hit record about good trouble. And I'd love for you to tell me, what does good trouble mean to you, and how are you creating good trouble?
What does good trouble mean to me? Good trouble, like, when I hear that, I'm like, you're paving a new path. Like, you're standing out on purpose. And I see that as trouble because, again, it does go against what we've been taught is normal. What we've been taught is how we're supposed to show up. And so the trouble to me is like, what I imagine is, oh, I stand out in my power. And so now I influence one other woman, and then I get this one other woman to come along with me. And now we're both staying in our power, and we both put out this energy, and we grab some more people. And so I just see this, like, I imagine women just like marching, and as we march, we just grab more and more people. And it's like, so many people could see that as we're marching to cause trouble, right? But we're not. We're marching for a united message. We're marching for helping women stand in their power and own who they are. And so that's kind of like good trouble to me. Like, it feels fun and exciting to, when people start to see who they really are, and they start to shine without holding to like the opinions of others. It's freedom that you can feel in your bones. And that's not what a lot of people are willing to do, because the work is hard, but rewarding.
Yeah. Freedom you can feel in your bones. I like that. Yeah. It's a good kind of freedom to have.
Yeah.
So you told us a little bit about your Uncensored community. And you also have a retreat coming up too. So do you want to share anything more about your Uncensored community? And then you can tell us about your retreat as well.
Yeah, sure. I love my Uncensored community. It's a community that was built for female entrepreneurs. Whether you're a mentor or a coach or a leader, whatever label you give yourself as an entrepreneur, for us to really have a place to have some trainings, have some insight, have some free masterclasses that really allow us to see more of ourselves, to start to step into that uncensored woman. So I created it as a place for me just to bring a ton of value to women who I know who are either just starting this journey or who are on like a continual journey. Because when we come together in community, like I said, it's like a ripple effect, right? So one woman staying in her power means someone else gets the inspiration too, and we create this ripple effect across the pond. So this community is like the pond where we bring everyone together to kind of learn together. And it's free and it's open to anyone. So I know that you guys will have the link and everything and it'll be good and we can share it there. But yeah, it's my mission is to bring a ton of value to women because I know where I was 8 years ago. And if this community existed for me 8 years ago, I probably could have circumnavigated a lot of the things that I went through. Not that they weren't great lessons, but when we can kind of skip some of those things, it's so much easier to go on this journey with other people than it is totally by yourself. And then I have that retreat coming up too, which is an extension of that. Like, again, come home to yourself, stand in your power. It's a 1-day experience. And it's in New Hampshire, so it depends on where you are. We have some people traveling for it, which is super exciting, but it is truly about coming home to who you are, about seeing yourself in your fullest power, and then transforming. So what I imagine is this woman walks through the door as one woman, and she walks out as a completely different, transformed woman. And what we get to do at the end of that is I actually have a brand photographer who's coming to capture. So every woman gets a headshot and she gets to see the new woman that she's shining as, and then take that with her so that she can, number one, remind herself, but number two, just really see who she has become in this short amount of time. So that's coming up on February 25th. I'm super excited for that too.
Yay. Yeah, where can we'll have links in the bio or whatever we call that underneath the podcast. But yeah, where can our listeners go to learn more about you, or if they want to say hi, any of the things?
Yeah, I'm huge on Instagram. I absolutely love connecting with like-minded humans on Instagram. So you can find me. It's my first name dot last name. So Guinevere.Stasio on Instagram, and just send me a DM. Come on over and say hello, and we can connect there. I would love to do that.
Cool. And how would you recommend our listeners go about starting their own pirate life and taking bold action?
Yeah. Oh, like if I could go back in time, like I didn't choose this life chose me. But it's still, I would still continue to choose it if it didn't choose me. I think it is what inspires you, like what, and that can be a person. Here's where I would start. I would start to look at what you're consuming on a day-to-day basis. On social media, on the news, right? Like the things that we allow into our lives are making such big influences on actually like who we are. And so when I started to kind of weed out the noise, it allowed me to really focus more in on who I was and my values. So if you haven't asked yourself, who am I and what do I value? I would definitely start there. And it might take you a little time. Like it might take you days where you're like, oh, yeah, that's something I value. Let me go write that down. And I just kind of keep a running list, and it changes all the time and things add to it. And, but if you haven't started there, that's definitely where I would start.
When you said I didn't choose this life chose me, I made a shirt one time it's still available on TeePublic, but it says, I didn't choose the pirate life life chose me.
See? It's perfect.
You reminded me of that.
It's true. It's true. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for talking with us today. We had a lot of fun.
I loved it. It's so good. Thank you for having me.